Can y'all hear me? Am I on? Okay. Well, thank you. So, gentlemen, we are without adult supervision this morning. All of our clergy is off at a planning retreat. And so you've got me and I've got a lesson. And my wife and I, Karen, went and hiked the Camino de Santiago to Compostela, and the advisory team begged me to tell you this. So if you don't like it, blame them. So, anyways, before we get started, I want to thank our clergy, Phil, David, Eric, the rest of the clergy, because they are in here every Tuesday morning and we get phenomenal lessons. And can we just give them, okay. So we're recording this, right?
We are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they're gonna see our thanks because we get great lessons every Tuesday morning. They deserve great thanks. The other thing I'd like to do is say thank you to Mr. Brian Mudderman, because he is up here every Tuesday morning. And who else can we have so much fun giving grief to about jokes? So, and speaking of jokes, I like to start this lesson. I found this article online by Miss Manners, and I'm just going to read it. It says, "Dear Miss Manners, we have some relatives who enjoy sharing pictures of their travels. Instead of a slideshow after coming home, they text pictures of themselves or what they're seeing to a group of half dozen relatives throughout the trip. In the last day, I've received 10 pictures, along with all the commentary from everyone else in the group thread. I have to admit that a selfie of them on an airplane and several people responding, 'ah,' doesn't particularly interest me and disrupts my day. I'm very happy for them that they are enjoying their vacation, but I'd be happier if they enjoyed it on their own. Is there a polite way to ask them not to send me pictures? I'd be willing to sit through a slideshow once they return. It's the constant text that I object to. Well, I did not text y'all while we were on the Camino, and I'm sure you're thankful for that. The bad news is now we have a 35 millimeter slideshow when we get back. So, anyways, and I really appreciate Fran Miller, because he sat through that joke twice now, and I think he almost laughed the second time. He laughed. Okay, that's good. Anyways, so the Camino de Santiago to Compostela. So first of all, who is St. James and why is he in Spain? So James is the brother of John, the son of Zebedee, sons of thunder. That's the James we're talking about. We got a lot of James in the Bible, but this is the particular James, James the Greater, James the big James, if you watch the Frozen or the Chosen. By church tradition, and we don't have documentation on this, but by church tradition, he goes to Spain and evangelizes northeastern Spain. He's not having a lot of luck. And at some point, he sees an appearance of the Virgin Mary, and she tells him to return to Jerusalem, which he does. And then when he gets back to Jerusalem, Herod Agrippa beheads him, and he is the first disciple martyred of all the disciples. So that's the James that we're talking about. His beheading is documented in Acts 12, 1 and 2, and it's probably about 44 AD that this happens. So that's the James that we're talking about. Then, how does he get back to Spain? Okay, and this again is church tradition. His body is taken up by angels. It's transported in a stone boat, if you can imagine that at the time, a stone boat sailing down the Mediterranean. And he goes to a place called Padron, Spain. He's got two faithful disciples, Theodore and Athanasius. They find his body there, and then they ask the queen of the area, Queen Lupa, if they can have a place to bury St. James. Okay, and she sets them some tasks. She agrees that we'll bury St. James here, but she gives them a couple of tasks. They have to go get the materials. They have to. It's almost like the 12 tasks of Hercules, and she is sure that they are going to die completing these tasks, but they don't. They survive, and they complete them well. Okay, and as part of this story, Queen Lupa then converts to Christianity. She is so impressed with these disciples of James that she becomes a Christian. And her conversion to Christianity is actually recorded. We have that written in a historical something called Codex Colac. I'm not going to try and pronounce it. Anyways, so we have that documented, and that's so how James gets transported back to Spain and buried in Spain. Okay, his body lays forgotten, his tomb forgotten. And so this happens in maybe the 40 AD, 45, 47, late 40s AD. He is rediscovered in AD 812. And there's a Christian hermit, Pelagius. He sees mysterious lights out in the field. He goes to investigate. He finds a tomb there. He informs the bishop. Bishop Theodomir investigates. He finds a stone sepulcher with 3 bodies in it, one of which is decapitated. He says, aha, this is the body of St. James. I know that James was decapitated in Jerusalem and was transported back here. This has got to be him. The bishop tells King Alfonso of Spain. Alfonso believes him and then makes a pilgrimage to the sepulcher to see the body. So this is the first pilgrimage. And King Alfonso, when you think about this, he's the king of Spain. He sets out on foot and walks by foot to the body. Okay, so this is an act of humility and veneration of the saint. Okay, so this is how we get the tradition of St. James being in Spain. Do you have a question? Good. Oh, he was probably St. James. I don't, when did the Catholics start calling? Well, yeah. When did they officially sanctify him? There wasn't actually officially a pope. The Pope, anyways, what we think of as Pope. Anyways, I don't know when he was first started being called St. James, but he has been venerated. Pat, we're all saints, yes. So, but that's the Protestant tradition, and we're still in Orthodoxy at this point. So, we're not going to go there. But before I go there, I do want to point out. So, at this time in history, the Moors had conquered most of the Iberian Peninsula. Okay, so Spain, as we know it, was really just the northern part of Spain. Alfonso, when he makes his pilgrimage to the tomb and finds St. James there, he says, man, there's going to be a lot of people that want to come see the saint, to venerate him, to get absolution of sins. Let's build a church here. Let's spread the word. Of course, at the time, that was lucrative. Okay, pilgrims started coming. They made a lot of money. He was able to use that money to raise an army. He then started the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula and pushing the Moors out. So Alfonso was incentivized to go find the saint in the field, find St. James, and start a cottage industry of people pilgrimaging. Okay, so there's a lot of routes for the Camino. The most famous one is, you can't see, okay, is this yellow one, which is the French route. And has anybody seen the movie The Way? Yeah, Emilio Estevez and Martin Sheen. That's the route that they publicize. About 400,000 people walk this every year. Most do the French route. About 30,000 will walk the Portuguese route. That's the one that Karen and I walked. Demographics, most of them are young, but half of them are maybe about my age. And we have some that are over 65. So everybody is welcome to walk the Camino. Everybody can do this. It just depends on how fast you want to go. Anyways, and then you can see some other demographics on the slide there. So what we walked was the Portuguese route from Porto to Santiago. We didn't actually walk the first half. We started in Tui, Spain. The last half of the trip is 72 miles. We hiked 92 miles in 6 days, so it took us 92 miles to hike 72, if you can understand this. So it's nominally about 12 miles from city center to city center, but when you get to the city center, you've hiked 12 miles, but you realize you're in this ancient medieval walled city, lots of churches and cathedrals and other things to see, so you drop your pack, and then you go see the town. So you walk you walk 12 miles to get there, you walk 4 or 5 miles around the place looking at it, and then you eat dinner and go to bed and get up and do it again. 72 miles, 114 kilometers. That's the shortest distance you can walk and still get this very nice certificate with your name written in it in Latin that says, I don't know what it says because in Latin I can't read it, but it says I hiked the Camino. and we hang that on the wall and we're very proud of it. So, like I said, we flew in and out of Porto. I've got a friend who retired to Portugal who lives in Porto. We got to visit with them. We took a train up to Tui and then did our walk. So the walk, these are some of the things you see when you're walking. Um, the trail goes through, woods and suburbs and cities, and a lot of it's, natural surface. Some are paved surfaces. This bridge here on the top is actually, well, it's part of a Roman road, so it's probably about 2,000 years old. This is a famous site where a guy, Saint Telmo, died in 1251 of a fever. He had made the pilgrimage to Santiago, and then on his way home, he caught a fever and died at this spot, so he's commemorated there, the Bridge of Fevers. The bottom picture is just a view of some of the scenery you get when you hike. Again, you walk through suburbs, woods, and Roman roads. Lots of walking. You see a lot of bridges. All these things, built 300 to 500 years ago, they're still in service. They're kind of one lane, so you take turns, cars going back and forth. Different cities. Again, you spend every night in some kind of a village or a city. So you get to sleep on a box spring and mattress. It's a big plus. You can eat in a restaurant with real well-cooked food. You're not carrying your backpack. You're not carrying, well, you're carrying a pack, but you're not carrying a tent. You're not carrying a sleeping bag. You're not carrying stuff like that. So,
And are there vendors?
so the question is, are there vendors along the routes? And the answer is yes. So with 400,000 people a year, this is a cottage industry, and the pilgrims are welcomed. I'm sorry, what? Yeah. There's a lot. We'll get to that in a minute. So yes, you are in civilization. Spain is fairly heavily populated. We are walking through a lot of rural countryside, so you see a lot of farms. You see a lot of grape arbors, that kind of thing. But you keep going through villages. You spend every night. Again, most of them are in these ancient walled cities. The walls have been taken down, but the cities are still there. They're population centers. There's hotels. There's restaurants. There's cafes along the way. The question was, did we book ahead? And the answer is yes. You can hike the Camino on your own. You can just take your backpack and go over there and go. So you decide how long you're going to hike. You hike. You look for a hotel. You stay. We did not do that because if you do that, you're going to spend a lot of time in a hostel. And a hostel is hospitable, okay, but they're a little hostile. So that's like 40 people in a bunkhouse, okay, with a bathroom down the end of the hall. Karen and I are too old for that. Okay, we didn't want to do that. So we did book ahead. We had a company that made reservations for us, so we had a hotel room every night. Again, we got private rooms with a private bath. So beg pardon? We roughed it, Well, you can do 5-star. They'll book 5-star hotels for you, or 3-star, or they'll put you in hostels, whatever you want. Okay, we took the 3-star option, so we were roughing it. Okay, we didn't go for the 5-star option. No, we did not go through the question was, did we go through the Pyrenees? No, the Portuguese route is probably the flattest route of all the routes. So there is some elevation change, but it's not like hiking through the Pyrenees. So if any of y'all followed Sean to the South, when he talked about his hike, okay, they did the French route, and he was out for like 30 or 35 days. They went through the Pyrenees on the French route. He had a lot more elevation change than we did. So yes, we were not roughing it. We were just dipping our toes into the Camino. You can do a lot more. The route is not always pretty. There is a lot of beautiful scenery, but you can see some gang graffiti in these pictures. Never did we feel unsafe. Again, pilgrims are welcomed along this route. People want us to come. They want us to spend our money and be comfortable and be happy and come back again. So some of the things we see along the way. Here's a Roman milepost. So again, we hiked along an ancient Roman road, and these are the Roman mileposts, how they marked the distance from place to place. And, some of these are actually museum pieces. So these are replicas that we're seeing out in the weather. So these have been dug up and put in museums. And they're just kind of cool things to see. We saw a lot of these stone crosses, and they're all over Spain. And these are the ancient way markers. So when you're when this Spain was less populated and more spread out and more farms, then they had these big stone crosses. And there's a lot of iconography on the top of the crosses. They all mean something. So if you know Orthodoxy and know what the symbols mean, you could read these things and they would tell you something, which I looked at them and said, boy, that's really cool. Now, there was a tradition of carrying a stone or a rock that represents a burden as you go, and then dropping it at the foot of the cross and leaving it there. And this is, representing leaving a burden as you go. And one of the things the Camino is for, people use it for, is to try and unburden themselves. Okay, people who are carrying burdens. If y'all have seen the movie The Way, okay, there's a lot of drama, and each of the characters is carrying some huge burden. Fortunately, Karen and I did not have that much drama in our hike. It was, like I said, it was more like a vacation for us than it was a pilgrimage, but there was a pilgrimage aspect to it. So we saw a lot of these stone crosses, and they're kind of cool to look at. We kept seeing these grain storage bins, the one on the left and then the one in the middle. We looked at them and we had no idea what they were. Okay, but they were all over Spain. Okay, and we finally stayed at a bed and breakfast our first night. The owner of the bed and breakfast, Isabella, had one of these. As a matter of fact, the one on the left is Isabella's grain storage. We asked her, "What is that?" And she said, "Oh, that's a grain storage bin." And we're doing a communication thing here because she spoke reasonable English, but it was broken English, and so we had a communication barrier. So she explained that's a grain storage bin, and we said, "Why are they up off the ground?" And she said, "Oh, it keeps the rats away." Okay, which makes sense. Then we said, "Why do they have crosses on top?" And she said, "Well, if you have a harvest and you put all the food you're going to eat for the next year into a grain storage bin, you ask for a blessing on your storage area, because if something goes wrong, the rats get in." And you can see the sides on it have perforations so you can have air go through so they stay dry, but the rats can't get in. Birds can't get in. Okay, we're going to keep our food supply safe, and we've asked for a blessing on our food supply. And so again, stuff you see as you hike. There's a lot of water in Spain, so we saw a lot of fountains, and some of them would say non-potable. Most of them said potable water, so you could drink from it. Karen and I didn't test any of them. We always carried water with us. And the guidebook said you could drink, if it says potable water, you can drink from it, but we didn't. We decided not to test it. But they are all over, and they're fun, and they're a good place to sit down and rest. You see cats, okay, out in the countryside. I'm kind of a cat guy. I like cats, so you stop and pet the cats. Other livestock. You're walking through a lot of farmland and rural countryside. One of the nice things about Spain is, even though you're walking through farmland, no bugs. We didn't have to wear mosquito repellent. We didn't get bit. No flies. I don't know how they do it over there, but it's really nice. It's better than the Appalachian Trail. If you like the Appalachian Trail, make sure you take bug repellent. Other things we saw were grape arbors. And the wildest thing about the grape arbors is they make them all out of these granite pillars, these granite stones. And so they put these things in the ground, and they put the beams across the top, and they grow the grapes up them. They're all over the place. And the top right-hand corner, that's where they've taken up their granite posts from one grape arbor, and they're probably going to use it to plant another grape arbor someplace else. But grape arbors made out of granite posts. And we saw granite all over. There's a lot of granite, not very many trees. And I guess the whole place has been logged over, so not many trees. Other things you see, we saw some Jehovah's Witnesses. I think on our third day, we got up as we're hiking out of town. There's our faithful Jehovah's Witnesses trying to convert all the pilgrims who are on their pilgrimage to Christianity, I guess. I'm not sure. Anyways, we stopped to take a picture, said hello. They're out there evangelizing. There's something to be said for that. Still not sure why they were trying to evangelize us, but I thought this was worth a picture. We saw a lot of these stacks of logs, and these are eucalyptus trees. They have a big pulp and paper mill industry in Portugal. They grow these trees and harvest them, and that's part of their agriculture. part of their economy. You meet a lot of people while you're out walking, and so the people you meet, sometimes you come across people and we're going faster or they're going faster, and you really don't match pace and can't, you don't talk with them. Other people you meet, we don't speak the same language. Okay, so even though we could have a conversation, the best we can say is bon camino, and we all move on. But some people you stop and you can talk to, they speak our language. Of course, we're Americans, we don't speak any other language except English. So they speak English. We're walking the same pace. Okay, so we have conversations. So the couple on the left, they are from Germany. We saw them over 2 different days and actually got to know them. They've got kids. They've hiked the Camino 6 different times, or different parts of the Camino 6 different times. For them, it's a great vacation. And we learned a lot about when we go back and do this the next time, what we will do different. The woman on the right, she was probably the most interesting person that we met, Michaela. She was celebrating a 1-year anniversary of being free from brain cancer, cancer-free. She was on hiking the Camino for a break from her husband and 3 teenage sons. And to find, I think she was in a period of discernment, trying to decide what she wanted to do. She spoke excellent English, and she spoke like 4 or 5 other languages. That's what she told us. And she said when she was diagnosed with brain cancer, they said, we're going to do surgery next week. When you wake up, you might not be able to walk. If you can walk, you might not be able to talk. If you can talk, you might not have any language ability. Okay, maybe you'll be able to speak German. And she's from Germany. And she said she prayed, God, if you wake me up, don't take these things away from me. And she woke up and she still speaks all her languages. She complained that she had harder word finding problems in English. Okay, and I said, well, you sound pretty good. I think I've got worse word finding problems in English. Anyway, she was very interesting to walk with and talk with. We saw her one day. We walked with her for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we saw her again in Santiago when we got there. So you learn people's stories, which is interesting. Churches, you see a lot of churches. This is the first church we went to this is in Porto, actually, before we started walking. This is the Chapel of Souls. And to hit Phil's 5 by 5, we decided we would go to church because it was Sunday and we would go to church. Now the problem is we're in Portugal. I'm guessing that the sermon's probably going to be in Portuguese. I was hoping it would be in English because this is known for being a tourist church. But we went in and sure enough, it's in Portuguese. And I can tell you, a 20-minute homily in Portuguese is longer than 20 minutes. But so I was sitting there and thinking, first I thought, man, maybe we ought to leave. How this is, I don't know what's going on. And some parts of the liturgy you could follow. Right? You knew when they said the Lord's Prayer, everybody stood. Okay, some of these parts are familiar to us. Okay, but then I realized, I'm in church not for me. I'm in church to worship. I'm in church to honor God. I can do this whether I understand the homily or understand anything that's said. And so, Andy, it's not about you. It's about worshiping. And so then I had to sit there and just be patient and pray and be patient. Karen, on the other hand, had a completely different experience. She was sitting right next to me. She couldn't understand a word of it either, but she said she started looking around the sanctuary, and you can see how beautifully decorated this is. And if you start looking at these tiles and the outflows and everything else, each one tells a Bible story. Okay, so there's scenes from the Old Testament and New Testament all around the church. And she got into, can I figure out what this story is? Because it's in Portuguese. Of course, it's iconography. Okay, and we should know the stories. Okay, but to learn to read the iconography and figure out the story it takes some time. And so she was having a religious experience, even though she couldn't understand the words. She was getting a sermon from the building itself. So this is another church, the Sanctuary of the Pilgrim Virgin. So we saw a lot of churches dedicated to the Virgin Mary. Mary's big over there. Every church has an altar to her. Sometimes she's dressed as a pilgrim. Sometimes she's dressed as the mother of Jesus. We saw Mary the Ascension. So Mary is by tradition ascends to heaven without dying. Uh, Lots of different versions of the Virgin Mary. This one was Mary the Pilgrim. And you can see her altar here. She's all dressed up as a pilgrim, a very nice pilgrim. We didn't dress that nicely when we were hiking. We were in jeans and t-shirts and okay, but that's to the Virgin. This is the second Sunday. So we were hiking. I think we started on a Thursday. We ended on a Tuesday, 6 days. So we were out hiking on a Sunday. We were trying to make it to this church for our second church service. This is a little rural church. We missed it. So we got there just as church service was ending and the parishioners were coming out. They were also very welcoming. They let us go in their church and be a bunch of tourists, taking pictures. If you can imagine us opening the doors of Dunwoody Methodist Church and just letting people walk in off the street with their iPhones and taking pictures and that kind of stuff. We might find that a little weird, but they were very hospitable. They also had a bunch of folks in their courtyard. That's this middle picture here. If you wanted to leave your rock or something here at this cross, they had people from the church who were selling necklaces and other trinkets and making some money. So I can't actually tell Phil that we went to church, but we went to a church on Sunday. So I'm counting that for my 5x5. You see great views, beautiful scenery as you go. Some high points and other. We did have some elevation gain. So we were up on some fairly high mountains that you got to, about 2,500 feet in the air. So you could see some different views. This is coming in and out of the city of Padron. Again, Padron is where the stone boat docked, and St. James' faithful disciples found his body and then transported it to Compostela. Flowers and streams, again, just a lot of beauty. Let's see, we had some bagpipers and roadside musicians. So again, this is an industry where people hike. As you hike, you have to you have a little passport, a pilgrim passport, and you have to get it stamped. Since we were doing the last 100 kilometers, we had to get our passport stamped twice a day. Okay, so people will, play instruments on the side of the road. They'll have an official stamp. They'll play an instrument. You throw them some change, a euro or two. You stamp your passport and you listen to their music for a few minutes and then move on. It's a nice break from the road and they make some money. And then. Yeah, he's hard to hear, but we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun with the roadside musicians. Yeah, you want me to? It almost looks like lederhosen, doesn't it? But it's not. Those are my zip-off pants. It was kind of cool in the morning, or some mornings it was kind of cool. It got hot in the afternoon, so yeah. We started out in maybe a long sleeve shirt and long pants and ended the afternoon in shorts and t-shirts. And very good, Paul. That's just for you. I'm sorry you can't quite hear the bagpipe, but that's enough. So we flew into Portugal and we were in Spain. So we had our American passport, right? And you had to show your passport to get in and get home. But this is a Camino passport that they give you, okay, that shows, it's kind of documentation that you actually walked the Camino. Yeah, so you can get your, so again, this very nice certificate in Latin. You would show them your certificate or your passport, and they would check to see, okay, 6 days, 2 stamps each day. Where did you start? And you ended here in Santiago, so there you go. I'm gonna talk about food in a minute, Fran. It's one of my favorite subjects. I won't leave it out, I promise. Phil? Yeah, so we flew into Porto and then we took a train up to Virgo, Portugal, and then we walked across we took an Uber, took a taxi from Portugal to Spain. Yeah, so I mean, all of this was in Spain. All the hike that we did was in Spain. You can start hiking from Porto, but again, that's about 200 miles. We hiked 72. That would have taken, a little over 2 weeks. And yeah, so we did kind of the mini version. Okay. Other things you see, we came across this big mural. The one on the left says, I forget the name of the artist, but this is Gordon, and he makes bells. Okay, and he makes these big cast bells, and this is actually a beer commercial for Estella Galicia beer. You were asking about food and drink. Okay, Estella Galicia beer is big in the area, and what they say is this guy crafts bells the old-fashioned way, and he makes great bells, and they're high quality, just like Estella Galicia beer. So have a beer. Okay, the one on the left or the one on the right, she's famous for saying a smile can break down every barrier, just like Estella Galicia beer. So have a beer. So we're hiking along and we see these big murals, and we pull out our phones and we're doing the Google Translate on the sign, and it's written in 3 or 4 different languages except not English. And you figure this out. Oh, we're looking at a beer commercial. Okay, and we'll have one tonight. Okay, so Fran, you asked about food and drink. Kind of our morning routine was we would be up by 6:30ish. From 6:30 to 7, we had to do blister management. If you're hiking, you get blisters. Okay, so you do foot care, you do other stuff. Okay, and I'm not going to throw my wife under the bus, but she took more time to do this stuff than I did. So you would do blister care and blister management. We had to have our bags in the lobby by 7 o'clock. By 8 o'clock. So we're downstairs by 7:30. We put our bags because our company's going to transport it to the next hotel. We would go, our breakfast was included, so it'd usually be at the hotel. Excuse me. We would have a big hiker's breakfast, and then you get up and hike. So you're hiking by 8:15, 8:30, 8 o'clock. You're gonna walk for a couple hours. You're gonna find a cafe. You're gonna sit down and have a pastry and a cup of coffee. And I did coffee in the morning. And then you're going to hike for another couple hours, and about 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30, you're going to find another cafe, and there were cafes all over the place, and you sit down and you have another pastry and a beer. Okay, and then you get up and you hike for another few hours, and by 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, maybe 5 o'clock, you're at your hotel. And then you drop your bag, maybe take a quick nap. Well, we took quick naps. And then you get up and you hike and you walk around the town that you're in to see the history, see this ancient medieval city. And then you find dinner, and then you go to bed. So that was kind of our routine. I would go into all the different things we ate and drank. If you want more detail, we're going to run short on time here, and I want you all to have time to discuss. So I'll just leave this at one of our tour guides told us that in Spain and Portugal, we drink wine and eat pork because our enemies don't. And this is a reference back to, the Moors who conquered the Muslims who conquered most of Spain, and then the reconquest that drove them out. Of course, they don't eat pork and they don't drink wine. Okay, so we grow a lot of grapes and we grow a lot of pigs, and we drink wine and eat pork because they don't. These are the places that we stayed. Again, we did kind of 3-star hotels. I would tell you a story. The first hotel we stayed in Tui, Spain, Karen dropped one of her earrings down the drain in the sink, and they weren't expensive earrings, but they were her favorite earrings, and she said, "Oh, I guess it's lost." And I looked down and I said, "You know what? I think I can disconnect the P trap," and emptied out in the wastebasket, but the earring wasn't there. So that's what I did. I'm hunting for Karen's earring. So then I thought it must be stuck in the sink mechanism. So I got down and I looked up in, and I found her earring up in the sink mechanism. And well, so what I thought was, what I thought was, this is the way God looks for us. Okay, and I'm pretty sure, we did a big study on the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. Okay, and I'm pretty sure the lost earring would have been the 4th parable in that series, but in scripture, things only come in threes. Okay, so Luke didn't need a 4th lost thing, so the earring got left out, but I'm pretty sure that would have been in there. But you can see, kind of the hotels and the dining facilities that we had. They were, we weren't in the lap of luxury, but we weren't suffering. Okay, This is the kind of the nicest place, one of the coolest places that we stayed at. Up in the top right is Isabella. This is her grandparents' farm that she has converted to a bed and breakfast. Again, it's probably 500, 700 years old, the house that we stayed in, been renovated. And you can see the grain storage bin in the left. She's the one that explained to us what the grain storage bins were. She also made this. This is her own personal label wine. She makes about 1,200 bottles a year. She personally harvests the grapes. They're her ancestral grapes on her farm. She makes the wine, and she served it to us. She served us dinner as part of our hotel bed and breakfast. It was wonderful. I asked where I can buy this. Of course, we're working with the language barrier, and it turns out you can't buy this. She only gives it to her friends and people who stop at her bed and breakfast. And okay, this I have to tell this story. This is a place that we stayed. This is the grandest hotel. This is built as a bishop's palace about 500 years ago in the 1500s. You can see in the lower right, I'm sitting, and I look tired because I am. There are 3 foot thick walls, just a beautiful, huge bishop's palace. Turns out the Catholic Church has a lot of these properties. They've got more than they can manage or maintain. So they've done a 50-year lease to a hotel company, a boutique hotel, and they've converted a bunch of these things into boutique hotels. So we got to stay here. There was a really nice restaurant in this hotel, like a 5-star, 4-star, very nice restaurant. And Karen really wanted to eat there for dinner, but we couldn't get a reservation until 9 o'clock at night. Okay, well, this is not good for Andy. And I was hangry and I was not my best self. So I have to confess, I was not pleasant company at dinner. And I had to apologize to Karen the next day, but so the next day we get up and we are hiking. It's our last day and we are hiking into Compostela, and I'm kind of stomping along, and I'm, to be honest, mad because I had to wait so long for dinner, and I had got to bed late, and I'm tired and cranky, and I'm thinking about the people that we've met, okay, and how some of them we match pace with, and some we can talk to, and some we can't, and how that goes. And I realized the one person who I've walked with this whole way is Karen, is my wife. And this is a metaphor I realized, and I'll say this is God speaking. This is my metaphor for life, okay? And isn't this our metaphor for life? We hike the journey of life, and some people we meet and we can talk with, and some people are just acquaintances, and some people, but if you have somebody who's walked with you your whole life, okay, this is a blessing. And I should not be upset about a blessing because I didn't get dinner on time and I got to bed late, right? Okay, this is just, in the big scheme of things, this is just Andy's in the ditch. I'm wrong. So then I had to apologize to Karen and yeah, make up. And so that was one of the lessons that I learned on the Camino. Treat your wife like the gem that she is. We got to the cathedral at Santiago. This is the cathedral. We thought we were going to do the Martin Sheen thing of walk in the front portal, which is called the Portal of Gloria. We thought we were going to put the hand on the spot and get down on our knees and walk on our knees to the, well, we couldn't. Okay, there's a guard at the front. You can see the big double stairway going up. There's a guard standing at the bottom that says, go buy a museum ticket and get a museum tour. Okay, the cathedral will be open for mass, and it'll be open for confession later. But right now, unless you have a museum ticket and get on a tour, you can't go in. So that was a little disappointing. The picture on the bottom is the square that is out front of the cathedral, and it's a big stone square. There's 4 buildings around. They're all historic. One was built by a king and one was built. Anyways, they've got a lot of history. So what we did, since we couldn't go in, we went down to this office and we got our very nice certificate that said, we hiked the Camino. We turned in our you give the passport and they check it, and you pay $2. And actually the certificate's free, but you pay $2 for this nice tube, and you can roll this up and carry it home so it doesn't break. You can get it home safely. Because that is why we hike the Camino, so we can get a certificate to hang on our wall. That's why we hike. So, but we went down and got our certificates. That was at 5. By 7 o'clock, there was a pilgrim mass We came back for it. We were just barely in time. We got in. This cathedral seats 1,200 people. They have 5 masses a day. When we got there, there was standing room only. So we came in and we'd hiked. The last day was the longest day, 16 miles. I was beat. Well, we were both beat. So we had standing room only at the back, but we did get into the cathedral. But mostly we just said, let's go home. I can't understand the sermon was in Spanish. So we went home. And then we came back the next day and we found the cathedral. It was open for confession. And so we got to go in and look around. And we did do our museum tour also. But this is a statue of St. James. This is the main altar. So you come in the front door and you see that way down at the end. It's beautiful. And the whole cathedral is set up as a sermon. Okay, as you come through the portal of Gloria, you get the Old Testament told in stone statues and iconography. Okay, and then the main part of the cathedral is the New Testament, again told in pictures and statues. And then you get to St. James, and this is Revelation. So this is the New Jerusalem coming down out of heaven. So again, the building itself is a sermon. Okay, and then St. James, he's hard to see, but he's got one finger pointing down. So underneath him, down below, and you can actually walk, there's a stairway that goes down, you get to his crypt. Okay, so there's the box that holds the body of St. James, not his head, just his body. His head is still in Jerusalem. Okay, so you can go and you can see people are, putting their prayers and letters, they're throwing them through the bars. We couldn't, they didn't let us go in that closely, but so we did get to see St. James. We did get to see the inside of the cathedral.
Is that the crypt?
Yes, on the right. So there's a long hallway. Well, this is about a 15-foot hallway, and there's the actual casket, and that's a close-up of the casket. This is best I could do with my iPhone. Unprofessional photography. If you want professional photography, they do sell you nice books in the museum bookstore. Yeah, so it'll explain the whole portal of Gloria. So you can understand all the iconography. We bought one. Yes, so that's a tile floor. The whole cathedral is very nicely. I mean, it's all gold and silver and tile, and I mean, it's lavish. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry to. So the photography is not that good. That's my fault. Okay, again, iPhone but here, come up afterwards and this guy has pictures in there. So okay. Again, 5 pilgrim masses, 1,200 seating for 1,200. When we were there, standing room only. We did not get to see them swing this. This is the big. It's very hard to see in here, but right there is the incense burner that they swing from side to side. They don't announce when they're going to do that, because what they told us, if they tell people when they're going to swing the incense burner, nobody comes to the other masses that day. They all try and pack in. They can't fit all the pilgrims, so they don't announce in advance when they're going to do this. So it's by luck of the draw. When we were there, they did not do it. And then. No, this is my intention was to be done at 7:40 and then tell y'all to have some discussion time. But we've got 10 minutes left or less. So let's just, as a group, has anybody here been on a pilgrimage? Spiritually, emotionally, physically? Anybody want to talk about going on a pilgrimage someplace they've been? Pat Morgan.
I was just going to say that I felt like my walk to Emmaus was a pilgrimage. It's not hiking long distance and so on and so forth, but a lot of these same things impact your experience.
I would agree. So has anybody who's been on the walk to Emmaus? Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you haven't been on a walk to Emmaus, I strongly recommend it. It is a spiritual pilgrimage.
spent 2 nights in a bunk room with a bunch of men who all snowed. Cost to pilgrimage. It was absolutely wonderful, but trust me, it's
Not 3-star hotels.
No.
You're looking for the 3-star hotel, Emmaus. Yeah, okay. One of the questions I wanted to talk about, number 3, pilgrims historically have walked the Camino as penance before receiving absolution of sins at the cathedral. Is absolution of sins different than forgiveness? And any thoughts on the difference between absolution of sins and forgiveness?
Absolution. Absolution is being man-made, and forgiveness is God.
Okay, I like
Yeah.
Roger Young. Absolution of sins is man-made and forgiveness is God. They both involve forgiveness, right? Okay. Any other thoughts on absolution of sins versus forgiveness? Yes. So Jack had pointed out that absolution of sins is a Catholic term. Okay. And this is something as Protestants we struggle to understand. Because in the Catholic tradition, in Orthodox tradition, right, you are not forgiven until a priest who has, and this is the difference between 3 sacraments and 7 sacraments. The priest has authority to forgive sins on earth, certain sins, not all sins, but certain sins. Okay. And I am not forgiven. And I hesitate to speak for Catholicism and Orthodoxy because I'm not. I'm Protestant, but this is the idea that I'm not forgiven until a priest who has God's authority to forgive sins on earth has forgiven me. Okay, so pilgrims would typically hike the Camino as penance to receive absolution of sins, and that's part of the venerating the saints. As Protestants, we might struggle to understand that. Well, I mean, how do we seek forgiveness, or how do we seek absolution of sins? Okay, I hear an answer through prayer. Right, this is more of an issue between me and God. Okay, it's more likely to be a felt experience. I feel that I have been forgiven. I'll have an experience. My penance probably involves going to somebody that I have wronged and asking to be forgiven. That can be a very hard thing to do, or offering forgiveness to somebody who has done something to me. Okay, so there is a difference between absolution of sins and forgiveness. What does it take for you to feel you've been forgiven of a hurtful action? And what does the process of forgiveness mean for your relationship with the person involved? Any thoughts? Jack, so Jack pointed out that a healing takes place between me and the person who I've either wronged or who has wronged me, right? Penance is about restoring a relationship, right? We do pray the Lord's Prayer, God forgive me as I have forgiven other people, right? When you think about those words, God forgive me as I have forgiven those who have wronged me. If I'm struggling to forgive somebody who's done something to me, okay, I'm basically asking God not to forgive me. That's a hard thought. That's a hard thought. What else? So forgiveness can be a process. Has anybody thought about what is the process of forgiveness? Forgiving somebody who has done something to me? Okay, Robert points out that part of the process of forgiveness is time. Sometimes it can take time, and I would agree. Any other thoughts on the process of forgiveness? How about forgiveness and trust?
Yeah, very different.
Very different. Okay. If I'm going to forgive somebody who's done something wrong to me, I don't necessarily have to put myself in the same situation to be hurt again, right? Okay, I do need to be mindful of not encouraging or not enabling bad behavior.
It may matter how that person reacts to that.
and they repent with you or own up to the wrong. And then if you can reconcile, that would be a good outcome, but you wouldn't have to trust again if they weren't there.
Okay, Nathan points out that, hopefully you have a reconciled relationship and you can trust the other person, but it depends on how they are responding as to whether I can trust them again. And maybe that means I set different boundaries. I have, now a different relationship, even though I've forgiven or been forgiven, right? There are certain things I can't do or positions I can't put myself in. Any other thoughts on the process of forgiveness?
If your sin is absolved, it's gone away. I mean, it's wiped out. It's as if it never happened. And forgiveness is part of understanding that it never existed. You have to wipe it out completely. So, at least in the Catholic Church, you get absolved of your sin. It's as if it never happened.
So John points out that if I've been absolved of my sin, it's as if it never happened. And I know for me, when I'm feeling guilty about something I did to somebody, and this is usually things that I did years and years ago that somehow I'm feeling guilty about today, I realize when I pray and confess and ask for repentance, I can no longer restore a relationship with somebody for a past event in my past. I probably don't have a relationship with that person anymore. Why I'm still feeling guilty, okay, this is the evil one in my head, and I do have to turn it over to God and then accept the fact that I am forgiven. Okay, and there are consequences to my actions. Okay, but I know for sure God does not want me to sit here and stew in my guilt and shame anymore. Okay, He has looked at it. It is as if it never happened. I am forgiven. But sometimes it's hard for me to grasp that, right? To truly feel forgiven. Fran? Yeah.
That may have physical limitations. When you did your tour, if someone was getting tired around mile 8 or 12 miles, were there rides available, this kind of thing for people or not, or did you have to walk the whole thing?
Fran, we would make you walk the whole thing, but no. Yeah, we knew people who were going to hike the Camino. They were concerned that they were not going to be able to make the distance, and they decided, hey, if I can only get halfway, I'm going to call a taxi and go the rest of the way. When you think about it, we hike 12 miles every day from city center to city center. You can arrange your Camino to only hike 6 miles a day if that's what you want to do. There's hotels and places to stay all along the way. If you get halfway, you can get a taxi. We met people who were walking in shower shoes because they'd gotten blisters in their shoes. They were walking pretty slow. They may have taken a taxi. If you wake up one day and say, "Hey, I just can't go today," right? I can get a taxi and go to the next hotel. If you get, you still get a certificate. Okay, which is the reason we hike. And the answer is yes. If you get your passport stamped every day, you can get a certificate. And I'm getting the high sign for. I would recommend it now, and we've been told that there are so many tour companies that are arranging it that it's hard to find rooms if you just go on your own, because they've snapped up all the rooms. So, and thank you all so much for looking at my vacation pictures. We also have to thank Jody Wertz, because he's been getting people to pray, open us and close us in prayers, and Paul Roseman. Yeah, anyways.
Well, this is really not a prayer. I was thinking of the word forgiveness a while ago. Andy, thank you for that message. About 2 weeks ago on the bocce court, I play bocce about 3 days a week. Some of you guys play golf 3 days a week. And on the